continuation of our archiving of stories of Long Beach, in history of Long Beach State Crew. And I have at this time Ken Glenn and Steve Ryan, who did one of the most memorable, most incredible adventures for Long Beach State Crew in the history of crew. In 1968, the spring of 1968.
Actually, it was summer of 68. July 17th,
June.
44 years ago. You're right, June 17th. Thank you.
Okay.
June 17th, that was 44 years ago.
These two were in part of an 8 that rode to Catalina, the first known 8 to ever make the trip across the channel to Catalina from Long Beach to Avalon. And I want the two of you to, who came up, I'll just start out, and I want the two of you to go through the whole history. Who had the idea to do this, and how did this come about? And
Well, why don't we let Steve start, because I know that he did almost all the paperwork.
I'll tell you, I think the idea began with Greg Bond and I. I can't give either one of us credit, because we had this conversation one day that wouldn't it be cool to row to Catalina? And it just kind of sparked. So we ran it by all the other guys on the crew team. Everybody loved it. And we happened to have this old shell, the George Mazzotti, which to my recollection, you correct me if I'm wrong, it's the first new shell that was ever donated to Cal State Long Beach to help begin their crew program. So by the time we came along in 1968, it was somewhat antiquated, too slow to race. It was a heavy shell, so it would never be used in an 8-man shell race again. So we knew we had a shell that would make that voyage if we could get permission to do it.
That's right. It was a classic Pocock wooden cedar racing shell. And it never occurred to any of us at any time that it was not a good idea to row to Catalina. I don't know why. We just didn't think of it.
You need perfect conditions. And we learned more about how perfect those conditions would have to be the more we thought about this. So there were a lot of hurdles to go through to get this thing to happen. First of all, Coach Lockyer had to sign off on it. And he wasn't going to sign off on that unless we got permission from the United States Coast Guard. So I remember writing a letter to the United States Coast Guard.
on a typewriter.
On a typewriter, that's right. On a typewriter. I don't remember how long it took to get the answer, but I actually have that same letter. I posted it on my Facebook site a few months back, and we finally got permission from the United States Coast Guard, and they had no problem with us doing it at all, as long as we had a safety boat follow along with us.
Right.
So we did do that. So there were two of the hurdles. As soon as the Coast Guard signed off of it, Bill Lockyer would sign off on it. Do you remember what the third one was? That was up on campus. We had to get the administrative offices to give us permission to do this because there were insurance problems. They wanted to make sure that there weren't going to be any problems. So after I had this letter, I was able to take it up on campus, and it was a long process to review this, but ultimately the final decision came down that, gee, this is good publicity for Long Beach State. The Olympic trials are going to be here in a couple of months, so let's let them do this. So we ultimately got permission to do it.
Yes.
All right, who arranged for the follow vote, and then how did you pick the date? Did you have a couple of weeks? You just waited for the conditions to get to be calm, or
we had to watch?
You called everybody up in the morning.
We watched the weather reports.
We watched the weather and when there would be forecast, because the decision was made to go right at sunrise.
Okay.
Because that would be the calmest conditions, and we were looking for no rain, any kind of, it was sunny, and we went out and it was glass all the way, just gently rolling.
The first day you. Okay, so
we passed up on a few days.
You passed up on
the
a few
weather
days.
wasn't good
It
enough.
wasn't good enough. All right.
But this date he's talking about, it really was glass.
All right.
There were giant swells of glass out there. Occasionally, the escort boat would drift far enough away from us. I don't remember how far it was. Would it be like 50 yards away from us?
It could be quite a ways, yeah.
And the swells would be so high, even though they were glassy, the escort boat would disappear. We couldn't see them. So Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
I was felt
I
ABC.
called them that for years, but that's Eyewitness News for the record.
They followed us along.
They followed us
followed
along.
all the way.
All right.
And so we were televised, we were on the news that night.
Live at 11.
As a matter of fact, we stayed over in Catalina. I believe the telecast was the 4 o'clock news back in those days. And we watched ourselves on the news before we headed back. And they had all kinds of cool footage. I believe there was footage of dolphins jumping over our bow.
Well, this was the interesting thing about when we went, because some of us were not water people, a couple of guys in the group. And one of the guys was absolutely terrified of sharks. And so we're out there, and suddenly these dorsal fins start going up. And well, everybody thought it was a shark. So we had a momentary moment of panic in the boat as we had to calm down the landlubber who'd never seen it. So then we discovered, okay, these are just porpoises. And it was really fun because they were following along. And they follow for a long ways. And then they'd go off the side, come back, and kind of cross our bow. And then what really kind of, I think, was very exciting for us is we got, after the porpoise kind of took off, we had flying fish. Which I'd never, that was the first time in my life I'd seen a flying fish. And it just leaped across.
I happen to have a picture of us pulling into Avalon. It took us 4 hours and 15 seconds to get there. And do you remember that we had a mathematician on board our ship?
That's right, was it?
Who was our, it was...
Hankins or
Jamie Hankins. Jamie Hankins was our mathematician, and before we ever left for Catalina, he calculated out that we could do this in 4 hours. He said, I know we can do this in 4 hours. Now, our ultimate time was 4 hours and 15 seconds.
From the breakwater.
Now, let me tell you why we didn't make it in 4 hours and 15 seconds. Do you remember that giant freighter halfway through the channel?
There's nothing like seeing a 6-inch boat, 6 inches off the water, looking at a real freighter.
It was huge.
It was huge.
And do you remember, we wanted to play chicken with it. It was Coach Lockyer that told us, no, you guys are going to wane up. You are going to wait for this freighter to pass. We wanted to cut in front of that freighter.
We wanted to cut in front, yeah, because we didn't want to wait.
What kind of a wake did that thing throw off?
It was a pretty big wake, and we did have to prepare for it.
Yeah,
but it wasn't enough to just tip the boat.
We probably sat there and waited 10 minutes for this freighter to pass and for it to be far enough beyond where its wake wouldn't be too rough for us. Right. But I still remember to this day rowing through that wake. It was like opaque sea foam. You could hear the bubbles, you could hear the fizz, and it was just amazing to row through that wake, which was probably about 100 feet wide.
It was a big freighter. It was, yeah. And our plan was, and the deal was that we did not want to weigh up, and we did not. Once we hit the breakwater, it was nonstop rowing. It was a low rate of speed, 20.
So you didn't stop for lunch? You didn't stop for
water breaks?
There were no snacks. It was 4 hours straight through.
We didn't. 4 hours straight through. I was rowing the 7-man. Dave Chappie was stroke.
Did our coxswain, Bill Dixon, stop for any breaks? I don't know. Did he have any snacks?
I think he had water. I think he was kind of goofing off.
Now Bill Dixon was afraid of the water, or he couldn't swim. I can't remember.
That is correct. I forgot.
He wore a life vest.
He could not swim, and he also didn't like sharks.
Did everybody? The Coast Guard must have required everybody to have a life vest in the boat.
No, it was that escort boat
that had the life vest.
Had to have all of the mandatory safety equipment. So Bill Lockyer was in that escort boat along with the Eyewitness News and a few family members. I remember Greg Bond's dad came along.
Greg Bond's dad did a lot of it. For the week prior to that, we did preparation. And for some reason, we added a little strip of, I guess you call it vinyl or surfboard material that you use for surfboards, the resin cloth.
Well, that's right.
He put it on the edge of the outside thinking, well, that would not cut down on the water splashing it. I don't know what that was going to do, but it made us feel better. And so we put that all around. And
And we had all of our names painted on the side of the shell. So you could see there's Ken Glenn right there. Okay.
Do you remember all the rowers?
Yes, as a matter of fact, let's give you all of the rowers' names because I've got that on the iPad. I don't remember them in order, but I'll bring them up for you. So Greg Bond was in the 1 position.
All right.
John LaViolet was number 2. Ken Miller was number 3. Jamie Hankins 4. Frank Fayetta number 5. I'm number 6, Steve Ryan, Ken Glenn, number 7, Dave Chaffee, number 8, and Willie Dixon was our cox. So no one has since tried to complete this row.
It is,
So-
we have the record. No one has ever done it. We're
The first and the.
And I-
the only.
I think part of the reason is that these shelves are so fragile. How do you get permission to use one of these shelves to make that channel crossing?
Sure, a 61-foot
Sure.
racing shell, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think people have gone in an ocean going, where are you single? But
Yeah.
So our row turned out to be quite a success. We generated a lot of publicity for the '68 Olympic trials, which were held here. That George Mazzota, after we came back, was transported over to the Los Angeles Coliseum, and it was put on display there for a week, along with a press release talking about what we had done. The article was called "The Journey of the George Mazzota," and it promoted the 1968 Olympic trials.
that's
Right
right.
here in Long Beach, yeah.
That's right.
Super.
Then afterwards, it made its end. It was cut into sections. I kept my section of the boat for the longest time. It's only in the last 2 years I cut off.
So each of the rowers got it.
I had a
Second.
section of it too, and I don't have mine anymore, but I do have my seat that I wrote on.
Oh, you have your
I
seat.
still have my seat.
I have the gunnel with my name on it. That's all my wife would let me keep.
Great, great.
You know.
All right, anything else you can think of that you came
Well,
back?
for history's sake, we'll say we came back, we laid on the beach, we had lunch, we watched the TV.
Came
and
back,
then-
had lunch here or had lunch
No, in Avalon.
In Avalon, okay.
And then what we did was we turned around and the chase boat towed the boat. And Greg Bond started out by sitting in there and setting up the boat on the tow back. And that was a much choppier event. And
Okay.
I don't recall if other people rotated in, but I believe.
So
Greg
we sat
was
there and held 2 oars
to stabilize
to
the boat.
stabilize the boat.
And that's how we got it back, towed it back.
Yeah.
And that took.
It was
quite a
pretty
while.
rough rowing or towing that back after hours in the channel because it was quite rough. We
Did
would,
you get back in the daylight or did?
I think it was close to dark
Sunset,
by the time
close
we
to
got
dark by
back.
the time we got in. But we,
But what a day.
What a
fun
day.
I've never forgotten it.
me neither, but yeah, that was pretty awesome. We started right here, we ended right here.
You want to do it again?
Oh, should we do it again?
A 50-year anniversary, let's see.
I hear a challenge.
How about that same crew that just rode today? Our alumni crew. Dave, that puts you in the boat with us.
I wish I had, if I had been around then, I would have been in that boat. Unfortunately, I started that fall. So,
Oh,
yeah.
that's a shame.
So this would be my chance. Yeah.
Big chance for comeback.